The introduction of the International Statute of Secrecy in 1692 marked a pivotal moment in wizarding history. It put a stop to the witch hunts and unjust persecution of witches and wizards. It ushered in an era of harmonious coexistence. And most importantly, it separated the two worlds, Muggle and magical. But what if there was a darker element to the statute that has never been properly explored? An element that concerned the Muggles beyond the primary separation of the two worlds. What if the statute, and the subsequent formation of the Ministry of Magic, marked the dawn of an era wherein wizardkind stealthily wielded control over the non-magical world, deftly manipulating it from the concealed depths of the shadows? Today we're going to be exploring all of that and more as we discuss wizardkind's silent control over the Muggle dominion. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. For thousands of years, wizardkind lived in fear of the Muggles. They were persecuted relentlessly for their magical abilities, and it forced significant portions of the wizarding populace to start living double lives, using concealment charms to protect themselves. Eventually, in an effort to protect themselves and preserve their magical existence, they began to establish hidden communities within Muggle villages, and this is referenced in Dumbledore's notes in his copy of Beedle the Bard's Wizard and the Hopping Pot. As the witch hunts grew ever fiercer, wizarding families began to live double lives, using charms of concealment to protect themselves and their families. By the 17th century, any witch or wizard who chose to fraternize with Muggles became suspect, even an outcast in his or her own community. But this was just a band-aid solution in a growing problem that threatened the lives of the wizarding population at large, and by the 17th century, wizard-muggle tensions were at an all-time high. The persecution of witches and wizards had been on the rise throughout Europe since the early 15th century, which caused many in the wizarding community to feel a deep sense of fear and danger. Muggles continuously pressured witches and wizards to perform magic for their own ends, attempting to wield their powers for Muggle purposes and even demanding that they teach them magic. The number of witch burnings steadily increased, with even some Muggles being mistakenly accused and unjustly burned. Something had to change. And at this stage, well-respected spokespeople representing the wizarding community desperately attempted to establish communication with the Muggle British monarchy, who at the time was under the joint rule of William III and Mary II. The ministry's special delegation pleaded for the protection of wizards under Muggle law, seeking official recognition for their magical brethren. However, these heartfelt appeals fell on deaf ears. And it was this lack of response from the British monarchy that seemed to be the final straw for British witches and wizards. Left with no choice but the adoption of secrecy, wizardkind was forced to withdraw from the world of Muggles, retreating into their own magical realm. This in turn led to the enactment of the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy, a protective measure that has enabled wizarding society to remain in relative peace for centuries. The law was put in place by the International Confederation of Wizards, a wizarding intergovernmental organization that's roughly equivalent to the United Nations in the Muggle world. This law, first signed in 1689 and officially ratified in 1692, was created to conceal the existence of witches and wizards from the Muggle population. It was designed to safeguard the magical world through the implementation of strict secrecy measures, preventing Muggles from discovering the existence of the wizarding community and their magical abilities. Each wizarding governing body will be responsible for the concealment, care, and control of all magical beasts, beings, and spirits dwelling within its territory's borders. Should any such creature cause harm to, or draw the notice of, the Muggle community, that nation's wizarding governing body will be subject to discipline by the International Confederation of Wizards. The enactment of the statute heralded an era of clandestine division between the wizarding and Muggle worlds, and soon after its implementation, the British Ministry of Magic swiftly emerged as the foremost governing authority in wizarding Britain, coming into existence in 1707. Prior to 1707, the Wizards' Council was the longest-serving though not the only body to govern the magical community in Britain. After the imposition of the International Statute of Secrecy in 1692, however, the wizarding community needed a more highly structured, organized, and more complex governing structure than they had hitherto used to support, regulate, and communicate with a community in hiding. The formation of the Ministry of Magic was good for magical Britain in a lot of ways. It introduced central governance, law and order, resource management, protection, and a sense of unity. But I don't think that the Ministry of Magic was entirely and unequivocally concerned with just the management of wizarding society. I think they wanted to control the Muggles as well. The International Statute of Secrecy was a step in the right direction, as it ensured the protection of the wizarding population via societal separation. But in reality, the two worlds are thoroughly intertwined, making it very difficult for wizards to truly escape the dangers that the Muggle world posed. Which is why, in an effort to truly preserve harmonious coexistence between the two worlds, the British Ministry of Magic adopted a policy of appointing a puppet Prime Minister to oversee the Muggle world. For the most part, Muggle politics would play out as they normally do, with elections and polling taking place organically. In this capacity, wizardkind wouldn't interfere. However, on the night that the newly appointed Prime Minister takes office, the Ministry would make their move. It's well documented in Harry Potter canon that the Minister for Magic visits the new Muggle Prime Minister on the night of their appointment, the purpose of which is to inform them of the wizarding world's existence. We know this happens. But I think there's a little more to this meeting than meets the eye. I think that it's on this night that the Minister for Magic uses the Impious Curse on the Muggle Prime Minister, effectively taking control over both dominions. However, I don't think that this measure, as drastic as it is, comes from a place of desiring power. Instead, I think that it comes from a place of wanting to preserve peace and harmony moving forward. It also partially stems from an inherent distrust of Muggles, something which the history books can more than rationalize. Appointing a puppet Prime Minister could allow the Ministry of Magic to subtly influence Muggle policies and decisions, ensuring that Muggle actions do not inadvertently disrupt the wizarding world. Furthermore, with a puppet Prime Minister in place, the secrecy imposed by the International Statute of Secrecy could be more effectively upheld, ensuring that the wizarding world remains concealed from Muggle awareness. And who better to control than the man at the top, the one that calls the shots? By controlling the Prime Minister, they would be able to subtly influence all levels of government, micro and macro, eliminating any potential for the Statute of Secrecy to be broken. But here's the most important part. By utilizing the Impious Curse, there would never be any sort of a risk of anyone else knowing about the wizarding world beyond the Prime Minister. Canon would suggest that each new Prime Minister that's informed of the wizarding world is simply blindly trusted by the wizarding government not to tell anyone. But what sort of a safety measure is this? We know what people are like, and I'm not sure I'd trust someone to keep their mouth shut about the existence of an entire magical world, especially when the safety of the entire wizarding world is at stake. Think about it. What if a newly appointed Prime Minister turned out to be of dubious morality? What if he decided to tell everyone? Moreover, I can't think of a worse person to have that knowledge in the event that he decided to disrupt the existing balance between the two worlds. If a new Prime Minister decided instead to announce the existence of the wizarding world to the Muggle population, it could be disastrous. Based on this aspect alone, control over the Muggle Prime Minister is seemingly imperative and not something that should be gambled with. And while there are numerous ethical considerations to be made on the topic of controlling the Muggle government, it should only take a quick glance at the history books to be reminded of why Muggles can't be trusted. It was Muggles that persecuted wizardkind, not the other way around. And this is particularly thought-provoking if we consider that wizards were the ones that held all of the power. During the periods of history that wizards were persecuted, their magic would have easily dominated Muggle weaponry. But in spite of all of this, wizards chose the moral high ground, making the decision not to persecute Muggles in the way that they were persecuted. Which means that, despite possessing the upper hand and the ability to take control of the Muggle dominion at any point, wizards chose not to. Because of this, I think that wizardkind have demonstrated that they are the better society from an ethical standpoint, and have therefore earned the right to assert a small degree of power over muggles in order to maintain harmony. This is of course still up for debate, and I'm sure that some of you won't agree with me, but I am very curious to see what all of you think about this theory. Is it plausible that wizardkind silently pulls the puppet strings on Muggle society? Are the reasons for enacting this sort of control valid? And how much of an ethical dilemma is it that wizards are controlling muggles when muggles have historically been the ones to persecute wizards? Let me know down in the comment section below. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.